He never touched me, never kissed me, but I still remember the way he looked at me, like I was the only real thing in the room. That's what she told me, 3 years after her divorce, not about her husband, not about a fling, but about a man who never said a word. And maybe that's what we've all missed, that the most powerful connections aren't loud, they're quiet. They happen in glances, pauses, the way your presence shifts the air without you even realizing it. See, you might walk into a room thinking you're invisible. You're older now, softer, quieter. You're not trying to turn heads anymore. But what if that's exactly when you become the most powerful woman in the room? What if men still notice you, more deeply than ever before? They just don't know how to handle what you now carry. Today, I'm going to show you 12 subtle signs that you're far more attractive than you think. Signs that don't shout, they whisper. But those whispers stay with us for days, weeks, sometimes years, and I need you to stay until the end, because sign number 9, it's the one women overlook most, but men never, ever forget. Let's begin. You ever notice how some men, normally calm, composed, even charming, suddenly get clumsy? Around you, he can talk to anyone else in the room just fine, but when he speaks to you, something shifts. His words get tangled, he adjusts his shirt, touches his neck, stares at the floor, and you might think, he's uncomfortable. Maybe I'm too much, but the truth? You're not too much. You're just exactly enough to shake something in him. When a man is near a woman who radiates grounded, authentic energy, it messes with his nervous system in ways he can't explain. Not because she's loud, not because she's hot, but because she's real. There's no performance, no agenda, just presence. And for many men, that's rare. So rare that when they finally feel it, they don't know what to do with it. I've seen it happen. A man, mid-conversation, forgets what he was saying or says something way too serious, way too fast, like he's trying to fill the space, but doesn't know how. That's not disinterest, that's internal disruption. When a man gets nervous around you, it's not a sign to back down. It's a sign you're more powerful than you know, because he feels something. And that something is you. That's the first sign. And once you start to notice that kind of impact, you'll see something else start happening too. Because it's not just in conversations, it's in the room itself. The way people look at you. You walk by someone, they glance, you keep walking, but then they glance again. It's subtle, but you feel it. That quiet moment when someone does a double take, not because you're dressed up, not because of your perfume, but because your energy made them pause. That's the second sign. We often underestimate the power of that second glance. The first one can be accidental, but the second, that means they felt something, and their mind said, wait, what was that? I've seen it. A woman walks into a grocery store wearing flats, no makeup, hair pulled back, just doing errands. And a man, halfway down the aisle, stops and looks up, watches her walk by, then keeps watching. He doesn't approach, doesn't speak, but he feels something. Not lust, not fantasy, recognition. Because some women carry a frequency that you don't see. You sense it. It's not about being flashy. It's about being fully there, rooted, calm, unapologetically herself. People respond to that kind of energy without even knowing why, and sometimes the look says more than words ever could. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because sometimes the people who notice you the most are the ones who see you when you feel like hiding. You ever have one of those days? Nothing fits. Your skin feels dull. You barely slept. You're emotionally drained. You don't want to be seen. You're just trying to make it through the day. And then someone says, "You look beautiful today." And you want to laugh. This, today? Seriously? Yes, seriously. That's the third sign, because when you stop performing, when you drop the need to impress, something else shows up. Your real energy, the one that's not filtered through expectation or pressure, the one that just is. And that's what we feel. That's what stays. I've heard men say it again and again. There's just something about her. I can't explain it. She's not even trying, but she's glowing. And that's exactly it. You're glowing on your off days, not because you look your best, but because you're not trying. And in a world full of performance, that kind of realness hits differently. So the next time someone compliments you, when you feel messy, tired, or invisible, don't shrug it off. Don't say, "No, I don't." Instead, receive it, because in that moment, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, is the version of you that's unguarded. And that's the one we remember. You see, these signs don't always show up loudly. They're not billboards. They're whispers. Little moments that reveal just how deeply your presence is being felt, even if you don't realize it yet. And as you start to recognize them, something begins to shift. You no longer wonder if you're seen. You start to understand that you were always being felt. But not everyone reacts the same way to that kind of energy. Some will lean in, some will pull away, and some might even feel the need to push back. Let's talk about that next. It's not always direct. Sometimes the most revealing signs don't come from bold moves or obvious compliments. Sometimes they come through excuses, tiny, seemingly trivial interactions that don't make sense until you look closer. Like when a man asks you a question he already knows the answer to, or he lingers a few extra seconds to show you something he didn't really need to, or he starts a conversation that doesn't go anywhere, just to keep you near. You might not think much of it. It feels harmless, casual, even forgettable. But let me tell you what's really happening. That's the fourth sign. He finds small reasons to be around you, because when a man is deeply drawn to a woman, but unsure how to express it, he'll often take the long way in. Not because he's playing games, but because you make him feel something he can't explain. You don't flirt, you don't chase, you just exist, with this quiet presence that pulls him in, and he doesn't want to risk being obvious. So he stays close in the safest way he knows, by pretending he needs something. Pay attention to the pattern. If someone repeatedly finds a way into your space, your day, your inbox, without a clear reason, that's not coincidence, that's resonance, disguised as routine. And sometimes he doesn't even realize why he's doing it, but his energy does. But while some people try to pull closer, others push back. Not because of anything you did wrong, but because of what your presence reflects. In them, you've probably felt this before. You walk into a room, offer a kind smile, say nothing out of place. And still, someone gives you a look, a sideways comment, a tone that cuts a little too sharp. You're confused. You didn't provoke anything, and yet there it is. That's the fifth sign. Some women criticize you without any real cause. And I need you to understand this deeply. It's not about you. It's about how they feel about themselves when they're around you. Because when a woman walks in with quiet strength, centered energy, and no need to compete, it can unsettle those who aren't fully at peace with themselves. Sometimes your presence reminds them of the parts of themselves they haven't accepted. Sometimes it triggers insecurities they were trying to ignore. So instead of dealing with their own discomfort, they project it outward, onto you. They'll call you stuck up when you were just silent. They'll say you're too much when you were simply present, and they'll criticize your kindness, your clothes, your calm. Because something about it threatens their balance. This kind of pushback is not a punishment, it's a mirror. And once you learn to see it for what it is, you stop shrinking just to make others feel okay. You stop apologizing for the space you take up, and you start owning what you carry. And in the middle of all this, between those who stay too long and those who push too hard, there are also those quiet, beautiful moments that show up from people you don't even know. You're walking down the street, you're at the store, you're standing at a crosswalk, and someone, a stranger, catches your eye and smiles. They don't say anything. They're not flirting, it's not suggestive, it's just warm. That's the sixth sign. People smile at you for no reason at all. And this may seem small, but it's one of the most genuine reactions to real presence. Because when a woman radiates aligned, unguarded energy, it affects people's nervous systems in ways they don't consciously understand. It feels calming, safe, intriguing, and the body responds before the brain does, often with a soft smile. It's like a wordless recognition. There's something about you, I don't know what it is, but I like it. And here's the most important part. You didn't do anything to earn it. You didn't force it. You didn't chase it. You simply were. And that, right there, is your power. You'll know this kind of smile when you see it. It's not a performance. It's not an invitation. It's a quiet thank you for showing up in the world with a kind of energy that we rarely see, but always feel. And the more you notice these subtle signs, the more you realize you were never invisible. You were just looking for the wrong kind of proof. But what happens when your presence starts to affect even those who shouldn't be looking? What happens when the man who's already taken still can't stop glancing? We're going there, next. There's something that happens when a woman begins to truly carry her energy. It doesn't just affect the people who are available to receive it. It affects the ones who aren't supposed. So you felt this. You're at a dinner, a work event, the grocery store. You're not looking for attention, but someone glances at you. And you know he's taken. He smiles too long, his eyes linger, and then he looks away quickly, like he just realized he shouldn't have looked at all. You didn't invite it. You didn't flirt. You didn't do anything wrong. But still, it happened. That's the seventh sign. Even men in committed relationships glance at you more than they should, and while it can be uncomfortable, it's not about guilt, it's not about shame, it's about undeniable energy, because attraction isn't always sexual. Sometimes it's subconscious. Sometimes a man feels something that reminds him of what he's forgotten in himself, or in his partner. Your presence becomes a mirror, reflecting back something he's been missing. That doesn't mean you encouraged it. It doesn't mean you need to feel responsible. It simply means your energy speaks, even to those who pretend not to hear it. And in today's world, your energy doesn't even need to be in the same room. It travels across screens, through photos, through words that aren't even meant to impress. You post something simple, a thought, a candid photo, a moment from your day, no filters, no intention. To seduce, and suddenly, likes, messages, attention. That's the eighth sign. You receive attention online, even when you're not trying to. You might not understand why. You didn't pose, you didn't show skin, you weren't selling anything. But here's the thing, authenticity is louder than algorithms. There's a softness in your eyes, a confidence. In your tone, a peaceful energy that pours through the screen, and men, especially the ones who've been exposed to surface-level noise all day, notice it instantly, because it feels different. It feels true, and that truth is rare, so rare that it stops them in their scroll, and suddenly a woman who wasn't trying to be seen becomes unforgettable. But this kind of presence does more than attract. It confuses people. It makes them question what they're feeling. And that's where things get complicated. You've seen this before. Man pursues you, he compliments you, he checks in, he's consistent, he's interested, and then out of nowhere, he pulls back, goes silent, disappears. Days pass. Then suddenly he's back again, like nothing happened. You're left wondering, was it me? Did I do something wrong? Is he playing games? No, he's not playing. That's the ninth sign. He pulls away because he feels too much. See, when a man meets a woman who shifts something deep in him, it's not always exciting. Sometimes it's terrifying. You make him feel exposed, not because you asked anything from him, but because your presence stirs up emotions he hasn't named yet, and instead of leaning in, he runs, not because he's not drawn to you, but because he doesn't feel ready for what that attraction awakens. This is when many women blame themselves. They think, if I were more playful, more patient, less intimidating, but the truth is, it was never about being too much. It was about you being the first woman to show him something real, and he didn't know how to hold it. So he disappears, then comes back, hoping it will feel easier, but it rarely does, because you still carry the same truth he's not ready to face. And here's the thing you need to know. You don't need to chase. You don't need to soften or shrink. Your presence is not a problem to fix. It's a gift to protect. You see, when your energy starts to speak louder than your words, when your essence lingers long after the conversation ends, when even silence with you feels like something to remember, you've already left a mark. And the question is no longer, do they like me? It becomes, are they strong enough to meet me where I stand? But what happens when you begin to see that power in yourself? What shifts when the woman who once questioned her worth finally starts to own her light? We'll go there next. Here's something no one tells you. The most radiant women often don't know they're radiant. They move through life believing they're average, ordinary, overlooked, because they're not chasing attention, so they assume they're not getting any. But the truth, they walk into a room, and everything shifts. The energy, the tone, the air. People notice even if no one says a word, and yet she, the woman at the center of it, still questions herself. That's the 10th sign. You don't realize your own power. You think power looks like control, like charisma, like loud confidence, but real power? It's calm, it's steady, it doesn't try to take up space, it is the space. You might not feel it when you speak, but we feel it when you enter, when you sit quietly, when you ask nothing, yet change everything. You don't need to announce yourself because presence doesn't need permission, and when you begin to see this, to truly know this about yourself, that's when things begin to shift. But perhaps the most surprising sign of all is what happens when you're gone. You've been in this moment, you leave a room, a gathering, a space, and suddenly it just feels different. The mood flattens, the warmth fades, the energy cools. No one says it out loud, but it's felt. That's the 11th sign. Your absence is noticed even more than your presence. You're the kind of woman who doesn't just attend a place. You imprint on it, your laughter, your tone, your listening. They all leave behind a certain vibration. And when that vibration is no longer there, people feel the gap. Not dramatically, not consciously, but undeniably. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not because you tried to be, but because you were fully yourself in a world that's forgotten how to be real. And finally, the sign most women never recognize in themselves is this: you can sit in silence with someone, and it doesn't feel empty. It feels electric. There's no rush to fill the space, no pressure to entertain, just stillness. That's the 12th sign. Your silence doesn't make people uncomfortable. It makes them feel something, and that something, it's depth, it's safety, it's curiosity. It's the quiet realization that being near you feels like coming home. I've seen men sit next to women like this and forget to speak, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're still processing what they feel. You don't have to touch them. You don't have to seduce. Your stillness is enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's your true gift. Not your looks, not your voice, but your ability to make others feel more connected to themselves when they're near you. When you stop wondering, am I enough? And start knowing, I don't need to prove anything, you step into a completely different frequency. And that's what they feel. That's what changes the room. That's what stays with people long after the moment has passed. And when you begin to live in that knowing, you don't chase validation. You don't wait to be chosen. You understand, finally, that you were never unseen. You were just misreading the signs. But now, you see them, and now everything begins to change.